At first glance, Warhammer 40K lore paints the Space Marines as these flawless warrior groups, but the chapters that they represent have gone 10,000 years of deterioration, and sometimes maladies happen to the chapters themselves. Some of them genetic, others more of curses on the actual chapter, and that's what we're going to explore today in another deep dive video, starting off with Dorn's Darkness. Within the ranks of the Excoriator Space Marine chapter exists a unique genetic curse that strikes both the mind and body of a battle brother. This genetic flaw is known as Dorn's Darkness. It is a rare example of a deficiency within the gene seed of Space Marine successor chapter that doesn't manifest in its parent chapter. Similar to the Black Rage found within the Blood Angel Space Marine chapter, Dorn's Darkness also creates a hallucinogenic vision that makes the inflicted feel like they are no longer part of this reality. But the darkness goes a step further by affecting the Battle Brothers' muscles to the point of paralysis. Dorn's Darkness is a genetic deficiency suffered by one of the successor chapters of the Imperial Fist, the Excoriator Space Marine chapter. When Dorn's Darkness takes one of their numbers, it might appear to the untrained eye as a mere wretched palsy, a slackness of the jaw, a tremor of the limb, a blackness of the eye. But those who survive it report the experience as a living nightmare, a sleeping wakefulness in which they relive the bottomless woes of Dorn's most trying time, the terrible mortal wounding of the Emperor of Mankind during the final hours of the Battle of Terra. This could be seen as both the genetic blessing of the sons of Dorn's Primarch and a curse upon his sons. It is to know the possibility, for even a slight second, of an Imperium without the Emperor, to feel what Dorn felt, believing that the Emperor was dead. It is a paralyzing fear that even a man as great as Dorn experienced as he stood above the Emperor's broken body after the end of the battle with Horus. While enthralled within the darkness, its victims cannot speak or communicate. They cannot feed themselves or even take in water, and seem feverishly insensible to everything happening around them. The process of this genetic curse is somewhat of a mystery for anyone outside of the chapter. At first, the Battle Brother will begin to receive blood-curdling visions of the Emperor's fall, but they will only last mere seconds. This terrible glimpse into the past will be accompanied by small shocks throughout their joints and muscles, or some type of sensation of weakness that lingers for a while, usually as the Space Marine tries to make sense of the horror he just witnessed. As time moves on, the hallucinations will become longer and longer, and some of the physical effects will become more and more severe until they stay for good. It is at this moment that few Battle Brothers can actually hide the symptoms of this genetic curse, as they experience consistent and involuntary tremors of the face and the neck muscles. What's actually happening is that each episode is damaging the demigod's nerve endings, which comes with gradual pain and discomfort. Eventually, the darkness strikes the entire body, but by that point, the Space Marine's face muscles have already been wrecked by the curse, and they will lose control of their facial expressions. Uncontrolled squints, blinking, or closing of the eyelids will prevent many of the Battle Brothers from operating at an optimal efficiency. It becomes an extremely heartbreaking and saddening thing to see a Battle Brother slowly degrade into a shaking, twisting husk of a man, his face drooling and his body unable to perform basic functions. Through the entire process, the Space Marine is self-aware of his decaying health and his inability to control his own body. This loss of control will eat away at his psyche until he decides that it's better to sink into the false reality of his visions rather than to experience the embarrassment and the failure of this curse. Some succumb to the darkness during their training or in between campaigns. Others fall to the darkness during a battle, leaving them helpless in the face of the enemy. It's not clear which outcome is worse. The fact that this curse only affects the Excoriator Space Marine chapter and not any other successor chapter of the Imperial Fist is a complete mystery. It has led many to believe that there is something within the initiation process of the chapter that sparks this genetic flaw. As much as the Magos biologists of the Adeptus Mechanicus would love to probe and examine the gene seed implantation process or review the initiation rituals, which are rumored to be extremely self-deprecating, no chapter master has ever sanctioned such an examination, and their honor and victories through their long history has given the chapter the autonomy it asked for both the High Lords of Terra and their parent chapter. Those Battle Brothers who fall victim to the darkness are left to the care of the chapter's Santiarch, or the Senior Chaplain. The current Senior Chaplain is Santiarch Belshazzar. He offers the victims of the darkness a spiritual treatment that could either cure them or ultimately result in their death. Since the Excoriators are often a fleet-bound chapter, he has the afflicted interned within a decorative stasis casket that is transported from the chapter's reclusium of their homeworld of Eshar. The casket is beaten from dull adamantium, and the box has the dimensions of a sarcophagus and the extravagant ganture to match it. Its front piece features a raised depiction of the Emperor. Even though the casket stands upright, it represents the Emperor as prone, maimed, and broken, as he was immediately following the confrontation with Horus at the end of the Battle of Terra. The Santiarch solution to the affliction of the darkness is to create a spiritual darkness of his own within the stasis sarcophagus. It is the most solitary of confinements, where no self-respecting excoriator needs to look upon his own weakness, and where he might summon the strength and the will to banish the darkness of the Primarch and recover his sanity. It is not known whether or not the excoriators are the only Imperial Fist successor chapter afflicted by this genetic deficiency. It's not entirely known what percentage of Battle Brothers manifest Dorn's darkness. Very few heroes have ever been recorded as victims of the flaw. This could be because many Battle Brothers that sense the darkness coming will take on larger and larger risks in battle. To many of them, it is best to die fighting rather than fall victim to the darkness. Severe trauma seems to accelerate the curse. Unsurprisingly, the chapter's morbid fascination with pain and ritual scarring increases the damage of Dorn's darkness. Whether or not this curse will ever be conquered is a question left to the chapter's Master of Sanctity. Now, of course, we can't talk about Space Marine genetic flaws without talking about the Space Wolf's canis helix. The trial is long, for the warrior is taken thousands of miles into the barren wastes beyond the fortress of the Fang. He drinks from the cup of Wolfen, and his body absorbs the first and most deadly gene seed of the Space Wolves, the unique canis helix. This frightening potency of the canis helix is legendary, and has accounted for the lives of millions of aspirants as their bodies wither and churn in anguish. Those it does not kill, it transforms into slavering monsters. The canis helix is necessary, as without this essential part of Leman Russ's heritage, the other gene seed organs cannot be implanted at all. While in the throes of transformation, the aspirant is cast out into the wilderness to make his own way back to the Fang. The gene works hideous changes on the warrior's mind and body. He reverts to a primal state where his bones split and buckle, his hair sprouts from across his body, and his only desire is to gorge on fresh meat and glut himself on blood. His body mass grows up to 80%, many of his bones fuse, and fangs sprout from his gums. While the body is racked with pain, the warrior must overcome the shadow within him, lest it possess him entirely. If he doesn't, he will then become a giant feral creature known as a wolfen, those who fail to overcome the curse. To become one of the wolfen is to fall from grace, and to roam the wilderness forevermore as a creature of the darkest night, or be captured by his former brothers and held as a caged beast until the time is right for them to be let loose in battle. If the aspirant manages to find his way back to the Fang, despite the ravage brought upon him and the many perils that lie between him and his goal, he is implanted with the remainder of the Space Wolf's gene seed, stabilizing the canis helix and completing his apotheosis into a fully fledged Sky Warrior. They are welcomed into the chapter and take their place amongst the Space Wolves. As time moves on, it becomes clear that some of these warriors have not completely conquered the canis helix's original effects, and in times of great stress, they will alter into bestial states that haunt their souls like a ghastly shadow. This is the curse of the wolfen, and it's rightfully feared. Another ubiquitous genetic flaw is the red thirst and black rage. The red thirst is a terrifying genetic flaw found within the gene seed of the Primarch Sanguinius. It is a vampiric affliction that has plagued the Blood Angels and their successors since the days of the Great Crusade. The Ninth Legion was cursed with pale skin, elongated teeth, and a strange urge to drink the blood of their enemies. Worst of all was a deep and destructive need to cause as much bloody carnage on the field of battle. The sons of Sanguinius were taught to hold this battle fury at bay, training their minds, bodies, and spirits, but the longer the legionnaires spent in the thick of battle, the stronger the affliction became. Inevitably, after years and years of build-up, the first Blood Angel legionnaires succumbed fully to the red thirst, and allowed the genetic flaw to strip away their humanity, until only a feral core remained. These depraved Space Marines could only be satisfied by immersing themselves in the blood of their slain enemies. At this point, the Battle Brother was completely gone, and only death could save him from the curse. Fortunately, only a handful of Astartes had been afflicted over the course of 2 Terran centuries of continuous conflict. Most would perish in battle without anyone taking note of their growing insanity. But if their degeneration became noticeable, then Sanguinius himself, or the Sanguinary Guard's commander, would usually be the one to end the life of the afflicted Battle Brother. Yet in the closing days of the Great Crusade, the outbreaks of this affliction began to occur more and more often. Sanguinius feared that in time, this affliction would grow to encompass every member of his legion. Sanguinius knew of the Red Thirst for several years, keeping the truth from the Emperor and his fellow Primarchs. He could not speak of this to anyone, for to do so would be diminishing his legion in the eyes of his brothers and the Imperium. Some of his brother Primarchs would see this as a weakness and seek to turn the truth against him. Sanguinius was even afraid to tell his father, the Emperor, for he could not risk being the one responsible for the extermination of the Blood Angels from Imperial history, just like the 2nd and the 11th Legion. He was determined not to be a third empty plinth outside of the Imperial Palace on Terra. Sanguinius continued to search for a solution, but continued to fail in the endeavor. Some of the Angel's sons were fully aware of the extent of this affliction. They were united with Sanguinius in finding a way to repair the flaw, but ultimately their quest proved futile before the tragedies of the Horus Heresy swept away all of their concerns. As a result, from the day of their sanguination to their death on the battlefield, the Blood Angels and their successors fight not only the countless foes of the Imperium, but also a burning urge inside them. This is the Red Thirst, the legacy of their Primarch Sanguinius, that plagues many Blood Angels with visions of death. In battle, Blood Angels can harness these visions to evoke a ferociousness that gives the chapter its reputation for unparalleled brutal assaults. Sometimes, the Red Thirst is so overwhelming that the Blood Angels forget their noble heritage and completely lose controls over themselves. It is not unheard of for a Blood Angel squad to abandon a secure position to engage the enemies in hand-to-hand combat. More often than not, these assaults prove to be so devastating that unprepared enemy forces are simply swept away. There have also been terrifying incidences where the Blood Angels have been stationed on distant worlds, and members of the local population have gone missing, only to turn up later, completely drained of blood. It is possible that this is the work of cultists seeking to discredit the chapter. It may even be that some of the more superstitious local citizens have taken to offering up sacrifices to their godlike visitors. It may also be possible that these people were killed by the Blood Angels who are trying to satisfy the Red Thirst. Although the Red Thirst is the Blood Angels' darkest secret and greatest curse, it is also their great salvation, for it brings with it humility and an understanding of their own failings, which makes them truly the most noble of the Space Marines. The Red Thirst is one of the 2 genetic flaws found within the gene seed of the Blood Angels, and the other is known as the Black Rage. The Black Rage is a genetic flaw that creates mental instability in the Blood Angels, or one of their successor chapters. A battle brother is overcome with the memories and consciousness of Sanguinius. This intrusion mentally teleports the Astarte to the siege of Terra that had occurred 10,000 Terran years ago. He is lost and unable to distinguish past from reality to the point where his fellow battle brothers might be perceived as the enemy. Some Blood Angels afflicted with the Black Rage may believe they are Sanguinius, fighting in the bloody battles of the Horus Heresy, or they are the Legionnaires, desperately trying to save their Primarch from death. The Black Rage can strike a son of Sanguinius prior to or during a battle. When this happens, the uncontrollable rage of Sanguinius himself charges the battle brothers with constant anger, hatred, and fury. They possess a small portion of the Primarch's unearthly powers, as their strength and vitality boost to levels that seem superhuman even to those of the Space Marines. The condition is largely irreversible, and only a few Blood Angels have managed to overcome the flaw. Rather than let them face a slow, insane death, the Blood Angels and their successors will form a special unit from those that have newly succumbed to the Black Rage. This special force is known as the Death Company. They wear specially painted black power armor with red crosses to symbolize the wounds of Sanguinius, and are often led by a few chapter officers, notably chaplains, who are able to communicate orders to the insane troops. They are then sent out to perform the most dangerous assaults, hoping for a quick and honorable death in combat. Those that survive are locked away in the Tower of Amero, also called the Tower of the Lost, on the Blood Angels' homeworld of Bao, in the Fortress Monastery complex of the Arc Angelicum. Now let's take a break from the biological, so the genetic flaws of the Space Marines, and look at curses that exist within different chapters, starting off with the Grey Knights. Sometime late in the 41st millennium, a renegade chapter of Chaos Space Marines known as the Company of Shadows invaded the Imperial Fortress world of Morton. The renegade Astartes intended to perform a great chaotic ritual that would submerge Morton into the ether of the warp, transforming it into a demon world where their Dark Master would extend his influence. These vile plans were halted by the intervention of the Grey Knight Strike Force led by Grand Master Vorth Mordrak and the Inquisitor Krasin. The Company of Shadows and their zombified thralls were swiftly defeated, and the surviving Chaos Space Marines retreated into the warp, back to their night-shrouded homeworld to lick their wounds. However, the victory had scarcely been gained by the Grey Knights when a fleet of red corsairs, led by the infamous Chaos Lord Huron Blackheart, arrived in orbit. Thinking the planet still under the control of the Company of Shadows, who Blackheart considered rivals in need of extermination, the pirate warlord ordered the fusion bombing of Morton. Caught unprepared from the savage attack, the Grey Knights on the world were all but exterminated, leaving Grandmaster Mordrak as the sole survivor. The guilt of survival gnawed at him daily. The visions of his fallen comrades haunted his sleep, and their voices constantly filled his waking hours. Mordrak submitted himself to the rituals of purity, fearful that he had somehow been corrupted, but he was judged to be clean of any chaotic taint. But these manifestations continued to plague him to the point of insanity. Mordrak was unable to find either the cause of his suffering nor relief from it. The mystery deepened upon the world of Ralendream, where the Grand Master was separated from his strike force by a teleporter malfunction. Mordrak was left crippled and stranded alone upon the mist-covered plains that swarmed with demons. Eventually his weapon slipped out of his grasp, and oblivion seemed so close to this doomed Grey Knight. But then a miracle occurred. Terminators appeared out of the mist and encircled the unconscious Grand Master. Mordrak was found an hour later, surrounded by scores upon scores of slain demons. For a while the Grand Master's deliverance remained completely unexplained, as well as the identity of his mysterious savers. The mystery of Mordrak's enigmatic survival persisted for some months, until the Grand Master took to the field on the blood plains of Belos III. This time there was multiple witnesses. The mysterious warriors appeared in all 5 major battles, always fighting in close proximity to the Grand Master. Mordrak caught clear sights of his allies, seeing plainly the apparition's heraldry. It was the same blazon borne by his Grey Knights, slain upon the world of Morton. Given form and voice by Mordrak's own psychic might, the souls of Morton's fallen brothers had become bound to Mordrak at the moment of their death. Thus the cause of Mordrak's visions were finally explained. Though a powerful force, they were also unwelcomed. They continued to whisper of betrayal and vengeance. Mordrak concluded that there was only one individual responsible for the death of his fellows, the infamous Chaos Lord Huron Blackheart, whose red corsairs had destroyed Morton. Gathering a force of battle brothers, the Grand Master departed Titan in order to finally lay to rest his brothers by killing Blackheart. This is no small task, as Huron Blackheart is one of the galaxy's most powerful chaotic warlords, whose fleets and armies in the Maelstrom are said to rival those of the Traitor Legions. Mordrak came close to achieving his vengeance on one occasion, but was cheated by the Artificer of Huron. The formidable quest is further hindered by his oath to continue to carry out the chapter's greatest missions, forcing the Grand Master to set aside his own quest for vengeance. In order to free this lane, vengeance must be won, but Mordrak and his ghostly bodyguards continue to hold true to the Grey Knight's sworn cause. These apparitions that protect Grandmaster Mordrak are a perfect example of warp entities known as astral specters, sometimes referred to as warp ghosts. It is the raw psychic energy of the Grey Knight battle brothers that died on the planet of Morton that gave birth to these ghosts. You see, astral specters are formed when the energies of a powerful psyker coalesce with the very fabric of the warp itself, and that congealed psychic energy is given sentience upon the death of the psyker. As the ritual to transform the planet into the demon world was being stopped by the Grey Knights, the veil between the immaterium and real space must have been thinned down to the point where the Terminator's raw psychic powers had some opportunity to blend together, and when Blackheart killed the Grey Knights by bombing the entire planet, the Grey Knights' astral specters were created. For the most part, astral specters take on the form of beings that they came from, but are often corrupted and horrific mockeries of their former selves. Their semi-translucent form is enough to unnerve all sentient creatures, and while the ghosts that protect Mordrak are transparent, they don't appear to have corruptive elements in their heraldry, which makes them strangely unique. Most warp ghosts also latch onto a psychically powerful location or person that they use as a form of portal to enter the material world. Then they feast on the soul essence of the sentient beings around them. They require a source of psychic energy in order to replenish the energies from which they were born. In the case of Mordrak, his specters have bonded with him and siphon off not only his psychic energies, but also those of his enemies. In this way, the astral specters have formed a symbiotic relationship with Mordrak, where it is in their best interest to protect him, and they use him as a way to enter the material world. In this way, the astral specters form some type of symbiotic relationship with Mordrak, where it is in their best interest to protect him as he provides demons to feed the specters. They guard Mordrak by wielding a variety of psychic powers, allowing them to destroy demons and material beings with equal strength.
And it's important to note that although these warp ghosts are those of his battle brothers, meaning that they seem to share their memories and appearances, they are still malicious entities, and they revel in causing pain and misery, which is why Mordrak is haunted by terrible dreams of guilt caused by these ghosts. To make matters worse, it doesn't seem like either party benefits from these dreams. It's just the specters' natural tendency to terrorize their host. What makes these astral specters so strange is that they don't appear to be physically corrupting Mordrak. Most ghosts will unleash their psychic powers on their host in order to fully possess their bodies, but Mordrak's specters are simply not doing so. Whether this is because Mordrak is incorruptible, being a great knight, or the specters truly just want revenge, it's completely unclear. Either way, many within the Inquisition are paying close attention to Mordrak and his other dimensional bodyguards.
Another Space Marine chapter haunted by a very terrible curse is the Lamenters chapter.
A chapter best known for their haunted luck and cursed history. Unlike normal successor chapters that usually follow a theme connected to some type of battlefield role or a historical culture from ancient Terra, the Lamenters are distinguished as a chapter with terrible luck. This chapter is one of the only ones that takes this perceived phenomenon and weaves it into the lore of the Lamenters, creating a truly memorable story. I don't even like the Lamenters' color scheme or their battlefield tactics, but it's still one of my favorite chapters. Tragedy seems to follow this chapter, from being fooled into fighting against the Imperium during the Bad App Wars to almost being destroyed by the Tyranids. This disastrous history goes all the way back to their origin, as the chapter was part of the Cursed founding in the 36th millennium. They were one of many Space Marine forces that suffered from various calamitous events at that time.
And finally, let's talk about the Black Dragons.
The Black Dragons is a loyalist Space Marine chapter thought to be a successor chapter of the Salamanders. It was censured by the Inquisition due to the mutation of the chapter's gene seed, which caused certain Astartes of the chapter to develop blade-like overgrowths of bone on the head and forearm. Little is known of the Black Dragons in official Imperial records, but they have been noted in several classified resources as belonging to the 21st Founding, also known as the Cursed Founding. The chapter was founded just prior to the Age of Apostasy, a time of civil warfare and bloodshed on a galactic scale, the like of which has not been seen since the dark days of the Horus Heresy. The Imperium was nearly destroyed during this time by the whims of the insane and renegade High Lord Gojvandir. During the 21st Founding, the tech priest of the Adeptus Mechanicus sought to improve the character of Astarte gene seed by perfecting and removing their existing identified deficiencies through various methods of bioengineering. The result was a founding of a series of Astarte chapters who have a long history of being plagued with rampant mutation and chaos corruption. None can tell the number of cursed founding chapters that are in existence, as all records of their creation have been expunged from Imperial archives. It did not take long for the flaws inherited in the Black Dragons to be altered and manifest themselves. One of the many gene seed zygotes Black Dragon neophytes are implanted with is the osmodula. This small organ has a complex function within the body of a Space Marine. It monitors and secretes hormones affecting epiphysiofusion and ossification of the skeleton, while engineered hormones encourage the forming of bones to absorb certain base chemicals administered in the Astartes' diet. 2 Terran years following the implantation, the neophyte's long bones will have strengthened considerably, and there will be a general increase in the overall size of the recipient's skeleton. Extreme ossification of the chest cavity, caused by growth of ribs forming a solid mass of interlaced bone plates, provide a Space Marine with an armored layer to protect their secondary heart and lungs. But the osmodula zygote of the Black Dragons functions in an abnormal way, as the result of a mutation of its DNA, causing the growth of bony crest on the head and a blade-like protuberance from the forearm and elbow. Like the Death Company of the Blood Angels, the Black Dragon warriors afflicted with such a mutation form into a separate fighting unit within the chapter. Known as the Dragon Claws, they sharpen their additional protrusions to a killing edge and sheath them in adamantium to turn them into deadly close combat melee weapons. The mandible bone and teeth of a Black Dragon Astarte are also unusual, as their canines grow overlong and become pronounced like fangs. Their mouth, bone inside, and lips are usually black in coloration. So too their tongues. They're tapered to a sharp point like a dagger. This level of mutation strains the tolerance of the Inquisition, and there are many record instances of a Space Marine chapter refusing to fight alongside the Black Dragons. Some chapters, such as the Marines Malevolent, would hunt down and execute what they regarded as deviations from the Emperor's genetic design, a template that had regrettably been diluted over the millennia since its initial perfecting. None now exists who could restore it, and so there were those amongst the Adeptus Astartes regarded as cursed. Although some chapters did not count themselves amongst these Puritans, there were still some of whom the presence of such an obvious mutant element amongst their ranks was not only distasteful, but also dangerous. It has been rumored that the Black Dragon's apothecaries deliberately encourage the mutation's growth, which results in rampant ossification growth, going so far as to knowingly implant genetically aberrant gene seed zygotes into some neophytes. This is exceptionally dangerous, and the practice is strictly forbidden by Imperial Edict, but old traditions die hard, as the sheer ferociousness of the Dragon Claws is much valued by the Black Dragon's chapter masters. Every chapter of the Adeptus Astartes is required to send 5% of its gene seed genetic material to the Adeptus Mechanicus on Mars. This tithe serves two purposes, enabling the Adeptus Mechanicus to monitor the genetic health of each Space Marine chapter, and storing Adeptus Astartes gene seed with the purpose of founding new chapters as needed by the Imperium. The Adeptus Mechanicus, on several occasions, has threatened the Black Dragons with military action unless it complies with this decree, and even when the chapter has submitted genetic data, its veracity has often been considered suspect, as each sample provided has passed the most stringent genetic purity checks without fail. Without being able to prove anything, many Mechanicus adepts believe that the Black Dragons submit genetic material culled from other, more pure sources. How this can be possible is unknown, and the Adeptus Mechanicus is eager to fully investigate the medical practices within the Black Dragon's chapter. The Black Dragon Battle Brothers are known to display a variety of tattoos and scars on their arms, which hint at a less than healthy background, which these warriors may have had before their indoctrination into the Adeptus Astartes. The terrifying mutations that their enhancements have racked on their bodies have become a badge of honor for most of these Space Marines, and they now modify their armor to allow them to use their retractable blades in combat. The Black Dragons primarily wear black power armor, and their chapter badge is a profile of a white stylized dragon head facing forward, centered on a field of black.
Now that's just a quick roundup of different genetic flaws and curses that struck a chapter. If you guys have any that I didn't cover, let me know what it is in the comment section below, and I might do a part 2. I hope you guys are enjoying these videos, and we will talk tomorrow. This is Gersh1 with One Mind Syndicate signing out.